Good morning. I'm Adam Brown, Chief of Detectives, and I'm here to update you on the officer-involved shooting from yesterday. As you'll recall, yesterday at 6:21, a shooting was reported at the Grand Court Apartments at 7610 Blanding Boulevard. While en route to the call, a bolo was broadcast for the suspect and the vehicle. Officer James Busque spotted the suspect vehicle sitting in traffic on Blanding near 103rd. Officer Busque attempted to stop the vehicle. The driver of the vehicle fled and a pursuit ensued. During the pursuit, as you'll recall from last night, the suspect went head-on at several oncoming vehicles as if he was attempting to play chicken with them. Fearing for the safety of the people on the road, Officer Busque executed a pit maneuver, spun the vehicle out in the 6700 block of London Bridge Lane. As Officer Busque came to a stop, he exited his vehicle, and the suspect vehicle, which had also come to a stop, was slowly rolling forward. Officer Busque commanded the suspect to get out of his vehicle several times. The suspect did exit his vehicle with a firearm in his right hand. The suspect, instead of complying with the officer's commands, decided to turn toward the officer with his firearm, and the officer was forced to fire several times, striking the suspect. The suspect then spun and came back toward the officer with his firearm still in his hand, raised the firearm toward Officer Busque, and he was shot a final time by Officer Busque, killing him. The suspect has been identified, we didn't have this last night, as Thomas DeWitt Johnson. His criminal history is included in the package that you have. He's a convicted felon, and his past convictions include possession of a firearm by a convicted felon and resisting an officer with violence. Also, some of the information that we did not have last night, the original call that started all this, the original shooting call on Blanding Boulevard, our suspect and two females were at an apartment, as I said, at the Grand Court apartment complex. The victim from the original shooting arrived at the apartment complex to do some type of mechanical work for one of the females. Our suspect became angry when he saw that the male had arrived. They got in a verbal argument, and then, supposedly unprovoked, the suspect pulled his weapon and fired several times, striking our victim. The victim's name is Mario Perez. He is a 39-year-old Hispanic male. He's at UF Health. I do not have his exact condition at this time, but I can tell you he was shot multiple times, and he's still being treated for his injuries. And as a reminder from last night, the original shooting call went out at 6:21 p.m., and the officer-involved shooting was at 6:29, so that'll show you just how quickly all this unfolded. And if you have any questions for me at this time, we'll be happy to answer them.
Chief Jim Shutler from the Times Union. Mario Perez, M-A-R-I-O-P-E-R-E-Z.
Yes.
And could you just one more time go over the scenario as to what happened when the officer stopped the vehicle and the suspect got out?
The officer executed the pit maneuver on London Bridge Lane, spun the suspect vehicle out. Both vehicles basically came to a stop. The officer exited his vehicle. The suspect vehicle had stopped momentarily and then was slowly moving forward. The officer, as he's exited his vehicle, was ordering the suspect to get out. When the suspect finally did get out, the account that I received is that the suspect started to get out, he reached back into the vehicle, and then that's when he emerged with the firearm in his hand and turned toward the officer.
Now, was the firearm pointed at the officer at that point?
I don't know at that point exactly. The officer said that the firearm was in the suspect's right hand, and something really important to remember, he was being instructed to comply, and instead of complying, he turned toward the officer with a firearm in his hand. The second volley of shots, or actually the final one shot, that is when he actually raised his arm. But as far as the hand position on the first time, I don't have that.
Thanks, sir.
To our reminder with Channel 4 News, was the shot intended as a shot to injure, or do we know that the first time that he fired at the
police officer shot? Every time that a police officer shoots, we shoot to eliminate the threat, whatever that may we shoot to eliminate the threat. And that means that suspect needs to no longer be a threat to the police officer or anybody else at the scene. Yes, ma'am.
You know, they saw that on WOKV News. The first report said that there were 2 witnesses. Is that still accurate?
We actually have, I believe, 3 witnesses. There was 1 witness at one location and 2 at another location down the street. That could have changed though by now.
Romney Smith with Action News. Question, I just want some clarification. There was a total of 4 shots, is that correct?
Yes.
And the first one was when he got out of the car, he was being instructed to surrender, and he didn't. When you say he turned around, you're not sure if he was pointing directly, but he did see a gun in his hand.
It's important, let me be really clear. The suspect made a decision to exit the car with a gun in his hand. He actually had to retrieve the gun and get out with a gun in his hand, and then he turned toward the police officer. The police officer then, at that time, fired his weapon to protect himself. There's in a situation like that, you don't have time to do a whole lot more.
So when you answered Annalise's question, Tark's question about eliminate the threat, that could mean anything from blowing out a knee to get them to stop to fatally wounding them. If the officer.
When I say eliminate the threat, I mean he's no longer a threat to the police officer. It means he either drops his weapon and complies, or he's no longer physically able to resist the police officer.
Can you tell us about his criminal record and how that played into some of the actions that he used?
It's all in your packet. You have his complete criminal history, but there is, I believe, there's burglary charges, resisting an officer with violence, possession of a firearm by a convicted felon. There's traffic offenses. There's drug offenses. This guy had quite a criminal history.
What is interstate cooperation? What is the charge of interstate cooperation? You say that several times.
I don't know. I'm not aware of that.
What you first continue, shooting him in the leg wouldn't eliminate the threat anyway, because he can still shoot you if you shot in the leg, right? You have to shoot to eliminate the threat.
You shoot to eliminate the threat. Yes, sir.
Chief, Jim Shuttler, got to the time machine. Where was the firearm found, the suspect's firearm? Was it within proximity, or was it
Very close proximity to the suspect.
So just for clarification, first incident, 3 shots were fired, and then the final shot was when they killed him after he got back up.
That's the information as I have it now.
Do you know how many of those shots, those 3, hit struck the suspect?
4 shots, 4 hits.
So
Wait.
he wasn't even supposed to have this gun in the first place then?
Correct.
Where on his body was he shot?
I don't have that information.
Any idea how far away he was?
No.
Anything further? Thank you.